Hey everybody, Rory Graham here with another episode of Success Tracks. And today I have the pleasure of interviewing a friend of mine that I've known for many, many years. I met him decades ago when we were shooting a show for Cosmetic Plastic Surgery Center in Virginia Beach. And it was a cable show, and we did a lot of episodes of that. And it was very well received. And one of the surgeons in that show was Dr. Robert Schnarrs. And so I first met him there, got to shoot a lot of different procedures that he did. Also got to interview a lot of patients that were the benefits of his surgeries. And so I got to know him in the process. Really nice guy, great surgeon, and I think you'll really find his journey to where he is today very enlightening. So that podcast is coming right up, right after this message.
This episode is sponsored by the book Diagnosis Parkinson's Disease. Now What? By Rory Graham. It's a practical guide for patients, caregivers, and their families who have been touched by this terrible disease. Order your copy today from Amazon and other fine booksellers, or get an autographed copy at rorygraham.com. Order today.
Well, welcome to Success Tracks, Dr. Schnarrs. How are you this evening?
Very good. Thank you. Thanks for inviting me.
Well,
I'm honored.
I was glad we were able to carve out some time tonight for this meeting. And I know that I have known you quite a while. And I first met you out in Virginia Beach at a cosmetic center out there. And we were shooting elements for the shows that you were doing on the cable network. And so I got to see, not only did I get to see you do some procedures and all, but I also got to interview patients that you had done procedures on. And so I know your reputation, and I know that you're one of the top surgeons in the field. And so anyway, I ask you on to talk to us about your success journey and all, and I'm not going to get in your way. I'm going to just turn it over to you, and so go for it.
Okay. Well, again, thank you, and I guess when we were working together before too, you got to see what happened off camera and behind the scenes and then things like that.
Right.
Because I think that's also very important. Is what you're like on screen and off screen, so to speak, and that's the same thing I think professionally. What is your personality and your persona when you're dealing in your profession, and in this case with patients, and what do you like when you're not? And I like to feel that part of my success is because I'm the same person in and out, and I actually introduce myself as Rob when I go in to meet patients.
You do.
And sometimes that surprises patients. They go, "Oh, really?" And there's sort of a running joke in the office when, my office staff will say, "Oh, so-and-so called and said they're supposed to come and have an appointment with Rob." Mm-hmm. So, because that's just how I do it. I don't make any errors about it because, certainly with what we do surgery-wise, it's a team effort. I mean, I can't do surgery without a patient. A patient can't have surgery without, a surgeon. So it is truly everybody working together to try to achieve things. And I'm big at giving compliments with people. If they heal well, I say, "You make me look good. You make good scars because you're the ones that's healing it." I mean, yeah, I do the cutting and the sewing, but in reality, they're the ones who heal it, and we can give them some advice and how to do that.
Well, I'm sorry. I thought I was cut. I didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh no! Go ahead. You can interject.
I was just going to say, over the years, I have recommended you, and so they say, well, so he's a good surgeon. I said, oh yeah, he's a really good surgeon. I said, but he's also a really nice guy. I mean, he really is. And I said, he's not stuck up or whatever. I said, he'll answer your questions and everything, but he's really a nice guy, and I've known him a while, and he's very good. So that is important, and it's important for someone who's considering a procedure that that they like the doctor.
Right.
So anyway, I'm going to turn this over to you. Go ahead, go for it.
Okay. Well, no, thanks. No, but and along the way, feel free to interject, ask questions, or prod me along, or ask for more clarification, things like that too. So
I sure will.
Because I've been doing plastic surgery now for 34 years, and during the course of that time, my practice has changed. Obviously, I think as all of us do, and currently heavily involved still in breast reconstruction, and that was an interesting journey to be able to offer those kinds of services to patients as well, and I'll hit on that a little bit later here. But still do a lot of cosmetic, and still do a lot of what people refer to as general plastic surgeon. And I do hand surgery, and people say, plastic surgeons do hand surgery. Yeah. There's not many areas of the body that plastic surgeons don't operate on, and there's a lot of subspecialization within it that encompass a lot of these various areas, and that's from kids to adults, male, female, body systems, congenital defects, trauma. Obviously people think of cosmetic surgery, but there's a whole lot more than just that. And I think that when you feel that you're successful, and I just like to think that it's doing what people expect and want you to do, and to strive for excellence despite everything that may try to impede that progress, because that's really what success is all about. It's that endless pursuit of excellence despite what comes along, to accept mistakes along the way, to learn from your mistakes. If you look at attributes of successful people, they're people who they take risks. You have to be prepared, and that's whether it's education, skill wise, etc. And a lot of times people say, well, successful people are just lucky, and I forget who the famous philosopher once said that there's no such thing as luck. It's simply being prepared for an opportunity when it comes along, and to make the decision that you're going to try to follow it or take that risk or things like that. So it's really preparation when opportunities present, and then to take the risk and follow that, and to be open to different things. So I think that's one of the things that's happened, and certainly in my career, becoming a plastic surgeon was accepting things that came along, even though it may not have what we had planned. And I know that we always talk about, making plans for your life. And I'm sure there are very few of us who are doing things now that we even imagined when we were kids, or young adults, or teenagers, etc. And I think that's true of a lot of people. We make a plan, but how often does that really end up panning out over the course of your lifetime? And we hear all sorts of people who started out in one direction, changed, and became involved in something else, and were very successful. And I don't think there's any one particular term for success. Some people think, oh, it's people who are wealthy make a lot of money, or economically. But I think it's also your impact. Do you have an impact? Have you made a change? Is it material things? Is it spiritual things? Is it your inner peace, feeling that you've made accomplishments and things? Is it what other people think, that you're successful, with you helping them to achieve their goals and aspirations and things like that? So I think that success has a lot of definitions, and it changes during the course of our lives as well too. What we may think is a success in our 20s, in our 50s, 60s, and 70s is something completely different. And is it successful in your career? Is it successful in your family, in your friends? And what you're giving to the community, those kinds of things. So I think that that definition really is different for different people as well. And certainly growing up, I didn't know what a plastic surgeon even was. I grew up in a very, very rural area in north central Pennsylvania. I was the first person in my family to go to college. and only about 10% of the people in my graduating high school class went to college. And I mean, that was of the people who didn't drop out to go to work. And that was, pretty basic things back then. And so I didn't really know what plastic surgery was. And I just was going to be a doctor when I started out. And it was only after I got into medical school at Penn State that my mom actually one time told me, we thought this whole doctor thing was just like a pipe dream, but we never really expected you to do it. And I said, well, I'm glad that you decided to wait till after I got into med school before you told me that and not before. So that was an interesting thing because this is not something that people did where I grew up. And so as I went through that in my initial medical education, I thought I was going to be a medical oncologist. And it wasn't until into my third year of medical school that I basically said, whoa, I'm not sure this is what I want to do because I'm a doer. I've always been good with my hands. I build things. I've built furniture. I've built models, model rockets and things, and still build and fix things. And so certainly that's what plastic surgery is frequently about, is quote fixing things. And that's when I made the conversion from being a medical doctor to a surgeon. And the decision about looking at plastic surgery was because of my advisor, who was also a plastic surgeon, and assisted me in the process of sort of working through that. And so, did a general surgery residency followed by a plastic surgery residency, and then began my career as a full-time faculty member at Eastern Virginia Medical School because I loved education, and I still love education. I still have surgical assistant students and physician assistant students, medical students, et cetera. And now we have a residency that I'm involved in teaching as well. So I enjoy teaching and did then and still do. And in the course of my career, started being referred patients for breast reconstruction involving with breast cancer, and became very involved with that. And at one point, probably at least half of my practice was breast reconstruction. And so it was sort of funny about how my life sort of got to doing surgical oncology, so to speak. And I always thought I was going to do medical oncology. So in a way, yeah, I'm still taking care of cancer, but not in the way that I had originally imagined it to occur. So it's funny how sometimes life takes you places that you didn't imagine you would get there, and if you resisted that or didn't take that opportunity, would you actually be there? And I think that's so true in a number of things that we do in our lives. Is, an opportunity comes up, you start down a path that you would have never imagined, and you end up going someplace or having opportunities to do things that would not have been available except for you making that decision and going down that road. So I think, success is different. And certainly I feel that success is different now than what it was early on, because we've learned, and we embrace, technological advances and the things that we see. And certainly in medicine, there's so many advances that are occurring. And sometimes it's hard to keep up with all of those things. But that's part of being successful, is still being on the cutting edge, so to speak. And that happened in my career as well too. And it really happened because I think in order to be successful, you have to be able to lead, but you have to be able to lead in a fashion that is not overbearing or bullying, so to speak, and to encourage other people to follow along and to be their best. And so, those attributes of being a leader, I think, are very, very much partly what people think of being successful as well too, to be able to have that opportunity to mentor, younger or upcoming individuals in whatever field you're in, and to help them to achieve their goals and aspirations as well too. So certainly that's an attribute of success, being able to help somebody else to get there. One of the things that in my breast reconstruction aspect, I've always been, very quote friendly with my patients. Because especially in the field of breast reconstruction, it's a very emotional journey frequently, and it's hard physically, it's hard emotionally, it's hard mentally, and so it's tough. So I think you being a friend as well as a physician is frequently important, and that people have that opportunity. And sometimes, what they need isn't particularly what your schedule wants. And I always tell people, the only time in the day when I can guarantee I'm going to be on time is usually the first thing. After that, I try to give people as much time as they need, not how much time the schedule has said I have allotted out for them on that particular time. Because, they have an issue or they have a question or a problem now, to say, okay, well, we'll come back in 2 weeks. It's sort of offsetting in my mind to do that. So I think being available, at the moment is certainly important. And one of the things that happened in my career that I think helped me to be a better surgeon in breast reconstruction and to, quote, be successful, was the conversion from doing breast reconstruction with breast implants from under to over the muscle. And at the time that happened in the early mid 2000s, almost all breast reconstructions were being done under the muscle. And it was only when a patient came in who made a request otherwise, and I was willing to be able to consider that and to act upon it and say, okay, well, wouldn't have been what I would have thought of, but okay, let's try that. It was a young woman, and it was in the early days when we were doing genetic testing, and so she had the gene for breast cancer and developed breast cancer in her late 20s, so very early in life. Had bilateral mastectomies, had bilateral reconstructions with initially a tissue expander, which is a special type of implant under the muscle. And then we came back and we exchanged that for real implants, as they say, the silicone gel implants. And by all of our summary and evaluations of that, had a very successful outcome. As a matter of fact, she won a bikini contest in Virginia Beach, so she thought it was good, as well as a lot of other people. And about 2 years after her surgery, at one of her office visits, said, hey, I want to take these implants from under my muscle and put them over. And we were like, why? That's not what we do. And she said, well, ever since I've had this surgery, I'm young, I'm physically active, and I've had a lot of chronic chest wall pain and muscle pain and neck pain. And when I do physical activities involving the use of my arms, I get a lot of spasm and pain. And I've been to see some other doctors about this, neurosurgeons, orthopedic surgeons, physical therapists. And she said, finally, I was with a trainer we were doing training to try to alleviate some of these symptoms. And the trainer looked at her and said, duh, your muscle is all pissed off because of that implant underneath of it. Tell your surgeon to put the muscle back where it started and where it should be anatomically, and put your implant on top of the muscle. So that was her request. And that was not how we typically did it. And in some circles, that was almost considered heresy. As a matter of fact, I had one doctor who almost said it was akin to malpractice to do that. So that was how different it was at that time. And I remember telling her, okay, we'll try that, and we'll go ahead and see how it works out. And I'm always of the bent that, my job is not to tell patients what to do, but to give them options and the pros and the cons, and say, okay, what decision do we want to make together? Where are we going to go with this? And not all the time do patients do exactly what I would have suggested or recommended, but they're certainly free to make their own decisions. And then for me to help to support them and try to get them to there. And so we did her conversion, and the next week when she came back for her post-op visit, I was totally expecting her to walk in and be like, oh my God, yes, you're right. This is not what I wanted. This is not what I expected. I should have never done this. You're right. Well, to my surprise, it was exactly the opposite. She walked in and was like, oh my God, I've not felt this good since my initial surgery. This is fantastic. My pain is gone. And I was flabbergasted. I was like, wow, that is not what I was expecting. And about a month later, an associate friend of hers came in and said, hey, I want the same thing that she had, because I'm having a lot of the same issues. And I talked to her and said, well, just because she had that result doesn't mean that you may have it. But, certainly after we talk about it and you want to go that route, go right ahead. And so we did that, and guess what? Same result. And so at that point, I sat back and went, wow, why is this happening? This is not how we do things. And it became pretty clear is that, as plastic surgeons, we would walk in and look at a woman after she had breast reconstruction and she was at rest and sitting there, and we'd look and go, oh yeah, it looks pretty good then. But when they did activities, that all changed. So the reality was we were not doing a very good job of evaluating our patients, asking them the right questions. And certainly after going through that, we look at somebody and say something like, oh, wow, those look really good. What do you think? Most patients are not going to go, well, I don't think so, because they're not this and they're not that and everything else. I mean, they're happy to have a breast after having mastectomies. And so for us to be told otherwise would be something that a patient may feel is just not right. So the reality was we just weren't asking the right questions, and we weren't doing a very good job of listening to what patients were really telling us, or we really didn't want to hear what they were telling us. So, a lot of my colleagues are very big on, having pretty big egos, but I think part of that is to, let your ego down and to be able to listen and to talk to patients and to listen to what they're really telling you, to be able to achieve their goals and such. And so that was some of the big lessons that I learned in my career was, again, just reinforcing listening to patients, talking to them, and sort of going outside of your box, being different, being able to take risks and accept challenges, et cetera, with things like that. So I think that's a big part of anybody's success story. And I think as you talk to people who are considered to be successful, probably hear a lot of similar things, that they took chances. They were willing to consider other options, that they gave it their all, even if it wasn't something that they may have decided they were going to do originally, and to be relentless in trying to achieve and be better at what you're doing. And I think that's true in a lot of areas that we currently experience in our lives. But that was sort of a couple of my stories, that I've achieved during my career, and the lessons that I've learned, and I think the reinforcement for, quote, just being yourself, and not trying to be something else, I think is another part of being a successful person in whatever endeavor and in whatever manner you may consider, what success really is.
And so just because things had always been done a certain way, that doesn't you leave yourself open to new ideas or different ideas. In other words, that's
absolutely.
Yeah,
I think that's a part of it. I think that in life, that's the same thing too. How often do we see that? That we've done something for a certain way all the time, and then somebody, quote, turns the market upside down with a radical idea. I mean, look at Uber and Lyft and the taxi cab industry. Completely alternate ideas about how to do something, and then alter a market, forever, realistically. So I think
like the iPhone.
Or iPhones, yes. Or laptop computers like we're currently talking on, and things like that. So I mean, there are so many examples of those things where when people decide just because it was done a certain way up till now doesn't mean we may want to continue to do it that way.
Right. Being open to change is important. So we've gotten 3 or 4 really good lessons out of that so far.
Okay.
Okay. And so right now, as you sit here today, you are at the Hague Center in Norfolk.
That's correct. Okay. Yes, the Hague Cosmetic Center.
And you offer a full range of things, not just breast, because that's the only thing you've talked about so far. You offer a lot of other surgeries, facelifts, and I think you mentioned hands.
Yes.
But so you do a full complement of things, and
yes.
And so your practice is to meet with the patient and then you give them options of different ways they could go, because I'm assuming that there's still lots of different ways people could go with this. I mean, you might do like laser thing, or you might do a one part of a surgery, or you might do combined surgeries, or whatever to get different results.
Yep.
And one thing I know that you do is you tell people what to expect, and I think and you're honest with them.
Yes.
So I think that's really important. so
and then I think that's part of it, is that, to give people information. There's somebody who said long ago that if you tell somebody what's going to happen and it does, you're a really smart person. But if you don't tell somebody what's going to happen and then it happens, and it's not something that's pleasant or expected, then somehow you're trying to make up for it, or that somehow something didn't go as planned because it wasn't something we had discussed ahead of time. But I'm a big proponent of sitting down and having a very open, honest discussion with patients, saying, what is it that you don't like? And not for me to sit down and say, oh, here's what I would change, or here's what I would do differently. And I frequently have patients that come in that were not given that opportunity, that the surgeon did what they thought they should do as opposed to listening what the patient wanted. And they weren't happy because they didn't get what they were really looking for. So I think that's a really important part of being successful, is listening to the patient, or listening to your client, or listening to the person that you're providing services to try to figure out where they want to go with their journey, and to assist them on that route. And to also tell them why we do things the way that we do. And I have patients all the time after our initial consultation say, wow, I've learned so much more about why we're doing things a certain way, because nowadays on the internet you can see all sorts of things. The information is overwhelming, and sometimes it's hard to tell what's real and what is sort of fluff, what's the marketing aspect, and what to really expect. How often does certain results happen, and what's the 1 in 100 results that people will show you, but that's not really what you can expect in reality, and things like that. So I take a lot of time educating patients, about what the options are, why we are doing a certain things, the pros and the cons, what you can combine and do together, what we may not want to do together for any number of reasons, and what the recovery process is like. And I would rather have somebody get better sooner than take longer, because in that case, they're the hero. And if it takes longer for you to recover from anything that we do, then obviously you're not prepared for that, and you sort of underestimated what that journey was going to be. So we've not really done a good job in that situation of getting you through all of that. And I still do a number of different procedures in plastic surgery. Years ago, I used to do pediatrics. I don't do that anymore, but I do a whole complement of cosmetic surgeries in men and in women. Still do breast reconstruction, as well as I mentioned, do hand surgery, and also do, quote, general plastic surgery as well too. And so a lot of times as plastic surgeons, we'll be referred patients because somebody else has run out of ideas or options, or things aren't getting better despite what they're doing. And so we sort of joke that, we have these magic wands or pixie dust that people think we have that makes things better. But I think part of it is again, just that pursuit of trying to achieve your goals is part of it, not giving up, even sometimes when you don't have the results that you think you want to get, and learning from your mistakes. I think that's a big part of being successful, is understanding how you made decisions and where you could have made a better decision and things like that. But I think that's all part of that self-learning, your introspection and being honest with yourself. Because if you can't be honest with yourself, who can you really be honest with?
Right. Well, I know that a lot of the things that you've said are certainly can be applied to any business. And I was just thinking how I've applied some of those myself to mine. And like when I would do like a video project with someone, I would make sure that my vision for the project was the same as their vision for the project. Because if you're working on two different things, you might be thrilled with it, but they may not be. So it's good idea to have that in mind when you go. And so I think you've raised some really good points. And so to the best way for people to get in contact with you would be, I'm assuming, your website, and they could call, and that contact information will be with this podcast.
Okay, great.
Is there anything else you'd like to leave us with on this before we close out?
No, I think, well, just in the fact that, explore, and I'm always a big proponent when people come to see me, that they get second, third opinions, etc., because everybody does some things differently. I think a big part of anything that we do in our life is being comfortable with the people you're doing it with. You have to be comfortable with your surgeon, with your doctor. You have to be comfortable with your business partner. You have to be comfortable with the people that you work with in your job and every day. And if you're not, if you dread going to work, then you should probably be doing something else, because obviously you're not getting enjoyment out of what you're doing. And sometimes when it's hard, it may not seem enjoyable, but at the same point, you're learning. So, and we never stop learning in our life. We learn every day. I mean, I learn something every day. There's never a day goes by that I don't learn something. Sometimes learn big things. But there's always something you learn every day. And I think if you don't learn something every day, you're not paying attention.
Oh, that's true. That's true. I haven't heard it stated that way, but you're right. You're right. Well, thank you so much for sharing your time with us this evening, and I wish you continued success. And I will talk to you soon. Okay.
All right. Well, thank you, and thanks for asking me to do this. When you asked me, I was actually very honored that you felt I was successful, because I feel that I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. I'm providing the services that people expect, and then I would hope that they would find acceptable for what they tried to achieve. And so, I'm honored that you think I'm successful.
Yeah, well, you have been very successful, and I think you're very modest too. But all right, well, thank you so much, and I'll talk with you soon. Okay.
All right. Thanks.
Let me wrap this
up. Great
up.
to talk with you.
All right. Okay, well, that concludes this episode of Success Tracks, and if you are looking to have something done or want an opinion to have something done, I'm sure Dr. Schnarrs would be glad to have a consultation with you, and his website information at the Hague Center will be and contact information will be with this podcast. And if you have a success journey that you'd like to share and would like to talk to us about that, please give us a call, and just go to successtracks.com, and there's an application there. You can just fill out the little email thing, and we'll be in contact with you. All right, so for Success Tracks, I'm out.